Hello, sports fans. From Las Vegas, welcome to Winner's Circle, presented to you by gamblersworld.net, where you find the top 10 professional sports handicappers posting their games on a daily basis. So don't have any problems logging on to gamblersworld.net. We will be posting a pair of complimentary Major League Baseball winners for Monday, June 10th. And with me, I have Doug Upstone. Doug from Doc Enterprises, from Doc Sports. Doug, how was your weekend?
It was good. Had a nice weekend overall. Had some good winners. Had some little tough luck to go along with it, but generally speaking, still doing very well in baseball. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But
Right.
just a nice weekend. Chip, how about
Okay. Yeah.
yourself?
I struggled, Doug. I had yesterday. I ended up with a push. I imagine most of the numbers on the basketball game was 7, and in the baseball on the weekend, I got caught in the switches, and it didn't pan out for me. By the way, I am Chip Chirimbes. I'm going to be here hosting for whatever time we have here, Doug. Maybe it's going to be about a half hour if we extend it. It is June 10th, and there are a couple of big time stories that have happened in Major League Baseball on this date. And Doug, I'd like to bring one of them up for you. Do you
Yep.
know in 1944? Now, you think about this. How do you think you would feel? 15 years old, 315 days. Joe Nuxhall gets his first Major League Baseball start in 1944. And Doug, it wasn't a good day for him. Do you have any idea what he did that day?
I don't recall. Of course, I just know that was during the World War II era, so
Right.
that played certainly a part into his youthfulness being pulled up. But tell me about it.
All right, Doug, he gave up only 2 hits. That's all. But he only went two-thirds of an inning, 5 walks, 5 runs. His ERA is 67.5. And he didn't get a chance to come back to the major leagues for 8 years. He ended up winning 137 games. He lost 115, was an all-star, and had a 23-year career if you count those 8 years when he was still struggling to get back into the big leagues. But there were a couple other things on this date, Doug. I'll give you one more before we come back. 1959, by a guy by the name of Rocky Colavito. You might remember him,
Oh,
right? Big power hitter, strong guy. 4 home runs in one game for the Cleveland Indians. He was later traded to the New York Yankees and had such a strong arm, considered one of the best arms in all of baseball at the time, Doug, as a right fielder, that when the Yankees were in their doldrums in those mid 60s, he actually came out of right field and pitched. And it's so amazing. He pitched, and it's amazing that in one of these games, he looks into the stands, and his father, who's in attendance, is in the melee. He jumps off the mound and runs into the stands to help his father. And of course, he was ejected from the game. So that's my little story about Rocky Colavito.
wow, that's a good one.
And when he was traded for Harvey Keene, a lifetime 300 hitter, you may remember,
Yep.
the headlines in the paper was 40 homers for 300 average. And that was the swap out there.
Oh, okay.
But we've got some more going. Doug, I got to ask you a question before we get to your game. And you got a great one with Baltimore and Tampa Bay, American League East rivals. How did you get started in this business, actually?
In terms of the business itself, I actually started handicap. I've been building up to it. I was in the golf business for forever. Did that for a long time. Got into but always kind of self-taught. Okay, let's just put it that way. In terms of always interested in numbers since I was a kid. Got interested following numbers in the 80s, went all the way through. And I think it was 2000. Oh, I know it was 2003. I actually then started my own service. To be honest with you, I don't even remember what it was called at this point anymore, because as you know, you go through a number of different names and what have you. And so I started that. And then I worked at StatFox starting in 2005 as a writer and doing. So then the two things kind of just continued to go along. And then I officially went back to this full time in 2010 and been going ever since.
Well, you've done really, really well. We know that. We see you on the leaderboard all the time. You've got a great game. This Baltimore Orioles team, which last year, of course, set the pace in the American League, and then, of course, got ambushed during the playoffs. They're going to Tampa. Doug, for a number of seasons, I've been waiting for Tampa to have the kind of season that they're having right now, 31 and 33. I always think that they're undermanned and undervalued, and they end up putting the screws to me, shall we say, but I don't think it's going to happen this year. I just don't think they're the same team. And this Baltimore club, 41 and 22, what can you say? And Doug, you like playing props and you like playing different types of angles. Do you know that they are 38 and 25 on the run line?
Right.
So that's a big difference. Last year they crushed it on the run line, and this year they did too as well. I see they opened $1.50 favorite, and I'm afraid to lay that. I was wondering if you were interested in the run line in this game.
I am not interested in the run line. I think I'll just take the. It's actually down to 135 in the money line now, so that's
Right.
certainly more representative. And to answer basically one of your questions about Tampa Bay, I think what's changed is for years they had all that front office. If it wasn't the best in baseball, it was a top five.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the case anymore. So they used to just bring pitcher after pitcher after pitcher up that, and everybody could throw, 95 to 100, had more than one pitch and all those things. And if you look at the team that went to the World Series during COVID in 2020, and, there were a lot of good young players on the team, but many of those guys haven't gotten any better. And I mean, we've seen stuff like that with the Cubs, for example, and there's been any number of other teams that, get to a certain level and they just never go beyond. And I think that's where Tampa Bay is, right now. But as far as this game, it's very difficult to execute a 4-game sweep. Okay. And that's what Baltimore's going after. And it's especially so on the road and then doing it at a division rival. So that makes it even more difficult. But here's the thing. When you look at Baltimore, they have won 7 out of 8 against Tampa Bay, including 5 of 6 this year. In this series, they have outscored the Rays 20-5, which included getting 12 runs against the Tampa Bay bullpen, which was at least average. Now they've fallen down to 24th in run prevention. Then Tampa Bay's assignment is made more difficult, having to face Corbin Burns today, who has won each of his last 4 starts and in those 4 starts given up just 6 runs. Now, Ryan, these types of names always give me difficult. Pepiot, okay, is the starting pitcher for them, and he'll try to slow down that Orioles offense, but he's got a 5.24 ERA chip. And and of the 6 homers he's allowed this year, 5 of them have come at home. And we know how good Baltimore is hitting long ball. Baltimore 21-10 on the road. Burns in his career as a money line favorite on the road of -100 to -150 with teams he's played for, 21 and 6, excuse me. And the Rays coming into this one, they're 0-7 at home against an American League starting pitcher who has an ERA of 2.90 or less. Let's take the Birds to fly home to get back home for their next series with a sweep today.
I want to add a comment about this move. When I was talking about the run line earlier, Tampa Bay is like, I guess, juxtaposed to the Orioles. Against the run line at home, Tampa's 11-26. So, I mean, these are 2 teams that have played in exact opposite styles. And, this pitcher you have out there for Tampa Bay today has been very effective, though his record may not have shown it. Ross, in every year that he's pitched, this is his 3rd season, he's given up less hits than innings pitched. And by far, coming in, he had 78 innings pitched in the past 2 seasons, giving up only 53 hits. This year, it's 52 innings and 34 hits. And you know who's even better? Corbin Burns. Corbin Burns has been absolutely outrageous, stingy giving up hits. So I was looking at this game thinking that I'm going to play this game under the total, either under for the first 5 innings or the entire game, because you had said to me you had mentioned how Tampa's staff, their relievers, are just not up to par right now. They're just not getting it done. So maybe the play for me, and this would be to play the Baltimore Orioles and the Tampa Bay Rays to stay under the total for the first 5, because this way you're going to get Burns and you're going to get the starter as long as he can last. Okay, I guess my game is going to be the Yankees and the Kansas City Royals. And last night I stubbed my toe. I took the Yankees against the who was it? The Dodgers. The Dodgers against the Yankees, and the Yankees had to come from behind, a big win which they desperately needed, having lost the 2 previous games without Soto. And there's big consternation right now in New York. It's just how badly Soto is hurt, how long he's going to be out, how can the team possibly survive without him. They've already hit the doldrums, but the Yankees are 46-21 on the year, Ross. And Kansas City is having their best season since they were at the World Series. They're at 39-27 right now. And Seth Lugo in his 15th season or 14th season, Listen to this, Ross. He was the 34th round. He was taken by the New York Mets, the 1034th pick in 2011. He's now 9-1 with a 2.13 ERA. He has been absolutely dominant. He's considered right now one of the leading candidates for the Cy Young Award in the American League. And he's up against Carlos Rondon, who's having his big comeback year for the Yankees. Really, they didn't anticipate for him to come back like he has. The Yankees have won 8 of their last 10. Rondon, though 8-2, has given up 11 home runs, and that's been his bugaboo because he's got a great whip. This happens all the time, Doug, where a pitcher can get people out, he gets people out, but he gives up the long ball. But fortunately for him, like this happens to Burns as well, there's usually nobody on base.
Right.
So his whip stays low, and that's why Rondon's ERA is 3.08, which is a little high I think if you have an 8-1 record, 8-2 record. But in his 10-year career, he had a start against Kansas City last September. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but he was on the rehab. He comes back. It was in September 30th, late in the season. He pitched to 8 batters. All 8 batters scored. They took him out, and that was his last appearance against the Royals. So I'm thinking maybe the Yankees might have a little doldrums here after that big series in New York. They had sellout crowd 3 straight nights against the Dodgers. People thought they were still in Brooklyn, and they were pouring out, and there was a mixed crowd at Yankee Stadium, and a lot of New Yorkers were kind of upset by that. But that's the ball game, and I think the emotional high. The Yankees may not be looking with the same type of vigor or attitude against the Royals, a team that they've dominated in the past. But they got to watch out for this Seth Lugo. I think that Kansas City is the side here. Though I'm a little worried, Doug, about the fact that the Yankees are actually favored in this game with Lugo having such a record. Any comment on that?
Yeah, I agree with you, Chip, 100% on that. I mean, that series, the drama that there was. Now, game 2 wasn't drama filled, but the game 1 was exceptional. But score was through 10 innings, and then the Dodgers ended up winning 2-1. Yesterday's game was full of drama. All the Dodger fans that were in town, taking up the seats. That was something that was a rarity. So now, and the other thing that comes into play here, and I'll cover some of the things you said too, but it's been quite a while now. I want to say 5 or 6 years that the Sunday night team that has to travel and it typically win the game, the next game, if they play that Monday, it's a poor situation. The exact numbers I don't have with me at the moment, couldn't find them, but I know it's a fairly typical play. So you got Kansas City 24-11 at home.
Right.
Got a team that's got to travel, like you said, off a big series. Lugo, by the way, myself, and I don't know if you agree with this on this one, Chip, but Lugo is having a great year, and we've seen a lot of guys make the All-Star team, kind of like out of nowhere,
Right.
And then the second half.
Yeah.
Okay, so keep an eye on Lugo for the second half as possible play against material, but not play against right now. 2.34 ERA just over 1. Rondon, as you mentioned, having a really good year. But in this one, the thing that happens is Rondon, as you mentioned, that last start against the Royals was pathetic, but that's not news. Okay, 3-6 with a 5.27 ERA against the Royals in this one. Granted, Aaron Boone's club 24-11 on the road. And I got to say, I mean, in terms of just team strength, I think the Yankees are the deserving favorite here. But with the total at 8, at home this season, 8.5. At home this season, when totals 8.5 to 10, the Royals are 19-6 at home. I think it's a great spot for the Royals to get the job done. And I'm in 100% agreement with you on this one, Chip.
Well, how about that, Doug? Great minds think alike, I imagine. So, here we are together. I'm glad you're backing my side as opposed to being on the other side, because I was concerned about the fact that they did come up favored. But, when you consider the Yankees bullpen as well as their starting rotation, probably the best overall and deepest staff. Before we go and send off and remind everyone about gamblersworld.net and to push the little like button and subscribe, I have one more for you, Doug, in 1981. And I like this one. Pete Rose tied for the National League hit record on this date in 1981. Do you know whose record he tied?
I don't.
The National League hit record was held by Stan Musial.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
3,630 hits. And the anomaly, and the great thing, and the reason I wanted to bring this up is that he had the same number of hits,
That's right.
1,815 on the road and 1,815 at home throughout his entire career. A
Yes.
three-time MVP is Stan Musial, and one of the all-time greats, elected into the Hall of Fame in 1969. Doug, I'm sorry I had to get it out there, but Stan is the
No.
man.
Oh,
You
that
know,
that was a big deal. He owned a when I lived in Illinois. He owned a restaurant that was a little bit south of where I lived, and I mean he was there all the time, and the place was always packed.
Yep.
Especially
He,
when he
I,
was.
I
Go ahead.
met him at a Super Bowl one time, and he was very, very gracious.
Oh,
And
great human being.
he was great. And I saw him across the way, and I said to my girlfriend, "I think that's Stan Musial." She goes, "Who's Phil Musial?" I go, "No, Stan Musial." And I got into a little crouch stance. I don't know if you remember. Stan
Yes. Oh,
Musial had
sure.
that, and I did that, and he looked up and he saw me, and he nodded his head like that, and it was great for me. I mean, it was a great thrill for me.
Hey,
But
Chip. Before we go, I have a question for you. Okay.
sure.
I looked this up and I'd seen a little bit on this. I just want to get your feelings or opinion on this as well. So right now in the National League, there are only 4 teams that have winning records.
Right.
So that's obviously that's pretty unusual. And so I did a little quick research and I thought, well, maybe it's, they're having really struggling against the American League. And that they're losing, but it's not terrible. Their record is 125 and 136. So again, not a
Right.
big deal there. But what is your thoughts as to why such a disparity in there? I mean, you have any thoughts on that or?
Yeah, well, my thoughts are if I'm in the National League, I say, hey, look at those White Sox. That's what I would say. But there's only 4 teams that, like you said, that's incredible. And the balance that would we keep talking about having balance as being so great. And this is after Arizona and Texas, two outsiders actually made it to the World Series last year. It's hard to explain why. From what I've seen, it comes down to pitching, and some teams have it, and some teams don't. And by the way, the Pittsburgh Pirates got 2 young
Yeah.
hurlers in there, and they're going to have to be contended and dealt with in the future. So, um,
You got to
I
go through,
don't
yeah,
know.
that every day, and then you throw in Keller too. I mean, Keller's not
Yeah,
old,
yeah.
right? He's
So
27,
if
I think.
they can learn to pick the ball up and throw it to first without without committing too many errors, then maybe there'll be a big improvement. I always like to see the Pirates improve because of those beautiful home white uniforms they have. I
Oh,
just
okay. You
love
like
it.
those? Okay. Do you like
Oh
the
yeah, with
Dodgers one as well?
yeah, I like the home whites for almost every club except the only team you probably couldn't like it is the San Diego Padres, who have gone down in history as having probably the 3 ugliest uniforms in Major League Baseball history. And but I think we've got about enough for today, Doug, and we've got our 2 complimentary winners. I put out, of course, um, Kansas City over the New York Yankees, and Doug, you posted the Baltimore Orioles over the struggling Tampa Bay Rays. And from Doug Upstone and Chip Chirimbes on Monday, June 10th, from gamblersworld.net. This is Winner's Circles. Say good luck, everyone.